Hey guys, it's Josh from Cardfight Empire here today, bringing you guys a long overdue video. This is going to be a video about how I won my shop challenge in Georgia. It's one of the bigger shop challenges. It's one of the top two biggest stores in Georgia. SuperGames had a shop challenge, and I won the SuperGames shop challenge with the Asha deck that you see here. Like I said, this is a long overdue video, so sorry about that, guys. It's just kind of hard to make videos right now because I'm just constantly on the move physically. I can't get myself in one spot long enough to make a video. So I'm just shuffling around right now, and it's a time of change, and but I'm sure I'll be solid soon. It's just a time of change right now. But like I said, I won the SuperGames Shop Challenge, so let's get right into that. First, we'll start off with the extra deck. I ran one of the Zeroth Dragon of Death Garden Zoa. This is your ultimate stride for this deck. I actually never used it. I never used it in this actual tournament, but it has come in handy in some of the games I played as Asha. So it's kind of like most of the ultimate strides in the game where you just run it. It's like most of your G zone actually. You just run it in case the possibility arises that you need to go into it. So the possibility just never arose during the tournament that I need to go into it, but it is still a very useful card. Then I ran 2 Linrose Premier. This is the Generation Break 8 for Neo Nectar. This card is, if you make it to this card, it is very, very, very good finisher. It's basically just like a Primavera on crack. For those of you who know what that is, allows you to attack with your side columns and then attack with Vanguard and reset your board and make everything super huge because it gets plus 10,000 to itself and the units called out. For every unit that you call out. So if you call out the maximum from the skill, which is 3, it and the rear guards that you call out will get 30,000 power, which is pretty good. I ran 3 of the new GR from the new Zoo Nation set, which is Velhamina. Velhamina allows you to call out more when she attacks, and then she also, Generation Break 4, gives 5,000 and a critical to your rear guards on the front row. So it's very, very, very good because it can pressure your opponent into spots where normally if they would survive the game because they could just take it, they can't take the attack because it has an extra crit. And that's not to mention if you check triggers on your drive checks. Then I ran 2 Lita. This is a very, very, very good start off, first stride basically. Lita just allows you to toolbox in so many ways. It's insane. So the toolbox with Lita basically comes from her skill, which is her skill allows you to gain the same name as every card in your soul. And then you can call up to, after you flip one of these, so you basically have one of these on your Vanguard circle, you flip the other one in the G-zone face up. And then for every card in your G-zone, after you flip the Lita, plus you add +1 to that number, and then you can call that many. So if I used Sabreeze in the early game, and then I called Lita and flipped this, or I G-guarded and then used Lita, then I can call 3 to the board that have the same name as my soul. And also a lot of people usually forget, if you can't call anything, you can call out your heart as well, because that is part of your Vanguard name. Then we have 1 Multi-Vitamin Dragon. Seems like a weird tech, and a lot of people hate on me for it, but it actually did come in handy in my ARG, not specifically the SuperGames Shop Challenge, but the ARG that I went to. I basically was running this card in here because it is a no-cost stride, and what I mean by that is its skill is no cost. It's literally the skill procs off of you just playing units to the board. So if my opponent tries to deny me counterblast in any way, I can still go into this and make a really good play as long as I have the hand to do so. Then I run 1 Sabreeze. Sabreeze is pretty self-explanatory. If my opponent tries to grade lock themselves, just so that I can't stride, we go into Sabreeze. You guys know the deal. As for G Guardians, I ran 2 of the G Flip Guardian, Coast Arena. This is pretty much just a turbo into GB8, but since I had the space in my G zone, I was able to run 6 G Guardians. Sorry guys, the video got cut, but yeah, like I was saying, I run 6 G Guardians, or I ran 6 G Guardians. I kind of just had the space in my G zone, so I figured why not. It gives me a lot more options to G guard, and a lot more situations arise where it's good to use any one of these. So I'll basically explain in short order why I used them the way that I did. So basically, Coast Arena, the first one that I mentioned, this is the G Flip Guardian from the new Fighters collection. It can become really big but also allow me to place units on the board, which can somehow, or not somehow, but sometimes come in handy with Ness and cards like that bloom even on my opponent's turn. So it can be really good, and then also, like I said before, turboing to GB8. I run 2 Antero. Antero is the new G Guardian from Zoo Booster. This is probably the best G Guardian they have, hands down, in my opinion. It costs a Soul Blast, which is good because you build up a good amount of soul in this deck with Blue Asha's counter charge and soul charge from Blue Asha's skill. So you usually have quite a bit of soul, so using Antero is really good. And then Antero, if you meet the conditions, just has it's a 46k shield by itself. So really good card. Then we have one Rain Breath Dragon. Rain Breath Dragon is basically the lower form of Coast Arena. I basically use it in the early game. Sometimes I play a unit, sometimes I don't. In order to make this a 36k guard, you can play a grade 2 from your hand and intercept with it. So my opponent's tagging me for like 31. That's helpful so that I don't have to waste an Antero, because if they're attacking me for 31, they probably have a bigger attack coming later. So yeah. And then the last G Guard I run is one Rainbow Cycle Dragon. I just really like this card. It helps you recycle, and also it can turn itself back face down in the G zone. So with Asha now, since you can recycle heal triggers, in old Asha there wasn't a way to, but in new Asha, since you can recycle heal triggers, it allows you to just G guard over and over and over and over and over, as long as you're going to this card and meeting the conditions. So yeah, that was the extra deck, and now we'll get into the main deck. Starting with the grade 3s, I ran 4 of the new blue Asha, or as I like to say, Bluesha. So blue Asha is basically like the core of the entire deck. Like, this card is so good and so solid. Like, both of its skills alone just help you do so many things that Neo Nectar couldn't before. Helps you fight Link Joker because it can put back lock cards, and then also helps you return triggers, which Asha and Neo Nectar in general doesn't really do well, because they're all about returning normal units to the deck. But Asha allows you to choose 1 unit from the field and 1 unit from the drop zone every turn and put it back to your deck. And then you also draw a card from doing that. So it's not like you minus from putting the card back from your field. You basically just break even. And sometimes it can be a really good setup for you going to your next turn. Also, you're allowed to play a unit after you draw a card if you should choose to. So it also just helps you get some blooms off. And then also the stride skill is way better now, because the stride skill just lets you call no matter if you have units already out or not. The previous 2 Ashas require that you already have a unit out to copy before it lets you use the on stride skill, which made you weak to decks like Kagero and Link Joker, any control deck really that would just clear your board. You wouldn't be able to use the on stride skill. But with Asha, this is so good now because you can just call out any bloom unit from your deck, whether you have a field or not. Getting into our next grade 3, one of my favorite cards in the deck. I run 4 INS, 2 SPs, 2 regular, clearly for the lulz, but really just because I needed it for a tournament, and my locals had 2 SPs in stock but not 2 triple rares, and I already had the triple rares, so it was just an awkward moment where I had to buy 2 SPs. But yeah, INS is a really good card. Literally, when you ride on top of it, like when you ride it, it's not as bad as a backup ride, in my opinion, because you can ride it. Not only can you use the on-ride skill to counter blast 1, soul blast 1, check the top 5 for a bloom unit, add it to your hand. And when I usually use INS, like skill, I usually get a PG off of it, either one of its skills. So the other skill allows you just when you bloom at the end of the turn, put it back to the bottom of the deck and check the top 5 for a bloom card and add to your hand. So it can be really good for plussing and just overall like clearing out your board. Then we ran 4 Cara. This is our new 10K card. Even though we're not like other 10Ks where we don't get it when we ride, but basically its skill is if you have a ranunculus Vanguard or a Vanguard with a bloom ability, this card gets 1000 in resist. So it actually helps you, like if you ride this, like if you start out with 2 of these in your hand and you ride one and you call one, this Vanguard will still be 9K, but this will be a 10K with resist from the moment you place it down. And so that's just really good because all of your grade 2s except for Thuria have the bloom ability. So whenever you're playing this on the rearguard circle, it just gets resist and power. And then also it gets 10K once per turn whenever it blooms, which can be really good. And then it gains boost. So whenever you bloom it, you're able to boost for 20K, which is insane. In this specific tournament, I ran 4 Promotion Maiden Lipset. So Lipset, what it does is it, like, I misread it the first time I ever used this card because it's very awkwardly worded. But basically, whenever you perform Bloom with this unit, all your other units in the same column as the one that's blooming, you choose all of your units in the same row, and they get 4K. And then if you have a face-up card in your G zone, they get boost, which you should always have because if you're using this first stride, you would be using Lita. And if you're using this beyond first stride, then you already have a face-up G flip unit. So basically, with Lipset, whenever you place it, so like let's say that you have a field, right? You have your Vanguard here, and then you have 2 Lipsets here, but let's say like you have one here and one here. When you place a Lipset, or you place a Thuria as Lipset, these 2 blooms will go off right here, and then it will give 4K to the front row and boost, and 4K to the back row and boost, since it gives it to the same row that it's in, not column. So it gives it to row, so when you set up your field, like this is just like 26 by itself because it's 13 plus 13, basically, which can be really, really good. It sets up really good numbers. You have like, this is like one of the only spots in the deck where you have like space to run wherever you want as far as like 4 grade 2s in the lineup. Whatever other bloom grade 2 you would like to run, you kind of just have space. I just liked the way that this one performed during the tournament just because it's not even generation break, the skill. So you could just in the early game ride, like let's say that I have Cara, like there was sometimes where you start off with Cara, and then you just call a Lipset, and you call a Lipset, and then this one blooms and gives 4K to this whole row. So this is attacking for 13, 13, 13. So it can be really good, especially if you get to go first, because your opponent will still be on a grade 1 Vanguard when you ride to grade 2. So you'll be able to get like multiple turns of pressure out of them in the early game, which I really like. Then I ran 3 Ideal Maiden Thuria. Pretty much has always been a staple for Asha. Helps you get your blooms off, helps you return cards to your deck. Just an overall really solid card. I did cut it down to 3 though from 4 in previous decks, just because it's not as useful as the other grade 2s. Moving on to our grade 1s, we have 4 Stride Fodder. Obviously helps you stride. This is a stride deck, so you need to have cards to accomplish that goal. Also, it helps you search out an Asha. If you should start the game with this card in your hand and a Ness, you're able to play it on the rear guard to go search out a blue Asha and then discard a card. So that can be really good. Then we run 4 of our Bloom PG. Now, this isn't the only Bloom PG. There is one that came out in this set. I prefer Lilga, though, for the pure reason of if I have to ride it and I'm fighting a tough matchup deck, when I go into Lita, my first stride, I can just search 2 Lilgas to the field and then counterblast 1 and bounce them to my hand. So it helps you stock up for your PGs, and you do want to run Bloom PGs if you're running Ness, because Ness just synergizes very well with them. Moving on from that, we have for Diane. This is not a new card. This card actually came out of GBT 12, but it kind of flew under the radar for a lot of people. So, yeah, it kind of flew under the radar for a lot of people, and it just wasn't really used. Now that we're running like a resist-esque deck, like this is used at 4. And it's just very, very good against control. It's literally just a copy of Cara, the grade 2, where if you have a Ranunculus or a Bloom Vanguard, it gets 1k and resist. So even on the rear guard circle, like this applies to turn 1, 2, where you ride this, you call this is 8k. So you swing 8k, and then this is 7k if it's on your Vanguard circle. Because it doesn't count itself. It would have been so good if it counted Vanguard circle, like Vanguard rear guard circle skill. But unfortunately, you know, Bushiroad would not give that to us. So yeah, it's literally just a copy of Cara. Can become 18k at will, which when you play a column of them, can be really good just because it's a 36k. Or 26 if you're not able to bloom both of them, but only one. Rounding out our grade 1 lineup, we run 2 repeated cultivation maiden Leslie. Leslie just helps you get like more multi-attacks off. Sometimes I use it with Ness to get more cards in my hand. Like it really just has a multitude of uses. Helps you build some soul if for some reason you have soul blasted a lot during this game, because you can also soul blast for Diane when you bloom it to return all the copies of it to your hand at the end phase. So you can call like 4 Dianes, and as long as all of them are bloomed, you can soul blast 4 at the end of the turn and add all of them back to your hand, which can be really good if you don't want to leave them there. And then so Leslie just soul blast 2 and retires itself after any attack that it boosts, and then it can go search out the same card that just attacked. So it has a lot of good uses. For our starter, going to grade 0s, we do run Broccolini Musketeer Akira. It is a grade 3 searcher. I didn't really find I mean, I did find like starters that were useful, but I didn't find any starters, in my opinion, that were more useful than having Kira. Because there's just sometimes where you want to get your Inesses or you want to get your Asha to your hand if you don't have it in the early game. So you want to be really set up for that first turn stride when you go into it. So Kira is just infinitely useful. Even if you don't hit it, it still builds you a soul in the early game, and it is used early enough so that your opponent can't snipe it. Moving on to our triggers, we ran 8 crit. We ran 4 draw and 4 heal. So I'm going to talk about all these triggers right here in one go pretty much. Milas right here is the Asha crit that shoves itself into soul and gives 5,000. This helps build your soul even on turns where like you use it in the early game and then you go into Lita. If you have nothing else to copy, you can just get 2 of these just so that you can build more card advantage. We specifically run this crit, the new Musketeer crit Rachel, because it has a almost semi-broken ability, in my opinion, where it can be regarded as a normal unit instead of a trigger on rear guard, guard circle, or in the drop zone, which means that when it's in the drop zone, like cards that return normal units to the deck, you can just return Rachel instead, which becomes really good because it's just adding more triggers to your deck, more pressure on your opponent. We did run 4 Monkey Pod Dragon as our draw trigger. I like draw triggers in this deck, but I've also tried out multiple lineup builds of triggers in the Asha deck. And I was kind of using this because I hadn't finished my playtesting with Lisbeth yet, the stand trigger, that is not limited in English, but is limited to 1 in Japan. And I didn't really know how I liked it, specifically because Asha calls normal bloom units to the field, so it's not like you can just call Elizabeth and copy just like you could in previous Asha decks. So it's kind of awkward using Elizabeth sometimes. However, I just opted to run draws for this specific tournament. Helps you on the defensive, helps you on the offensive, and then also if you need to shove to soul and give 3k to something, like it changes a lot of numbers. It changes Cara from 20k, assuming that it's bloomed. Changes Cara from 20 to 23, changes Diane from 18 to 21. So these are all, good changes in numbers that it causes. Then for our very last card, We ran the new Musketeer, Heal Trigger, Nikla. I'm pretty sure every deck that has their version of this heal is just running it now. So they've given us these new heals that are able to bind themselves and another heal when you G-Guard with them. So when you G-Guard with it and there's already one in your drop zone, you can bind both, and you can countercharge one or you can soul charge one. I've been in a lot of situations where this new heal is really good, just because when you G-Guard and you go into a card that costs like a G-Guard that costs a Counterblast, or a G-Guard that costs a Soul Blast, and you don't have those resources, you don't want to be locked out of using those G-Guardians because you don't have any Soul or you don't have any Counterblasts open. So that helps you with this, and then it also helps you prepare for your next turn. If you don't think you have enough Counterblasts for your next turn, and then you G-Guard into something free, and then you happen to Countercharge Soul Charge, or Countercharge or Soul Charge using this card skill. So really, really good. As far as my matchups, I don't really remember. Like, I remember that it was 4 rounds, and then it cut to top 8. I believe there was like 16 to 20 people, something like that. But as far as who my opponents were, I kind of forget who they were in the previous 4 rounds, because like I said, this was like a week or 2 ago. So it's kind of escaping my memory right now. I should have wrote it down, and that's my bad, but I just don't remember the rounds leading up to top 8. But I do remember when I got in top 8, I fought Gridora in top 8, and I 2-1'd it. So we did top 2 out of 3 in top 8, and I lost the very first game, but then the second and third game I just kind of played differently and won those out. Then top 4, I played against Blue Wave. That was kind of a hard matchup because it is literally just depending on like if the Blue Wave player draws the nuts as far as his early opening turns, and then also if I'm able to rush him back efficiently with Caras and 10k and resist and all that stuff. So that's really good. Also, if I just draw a really good defensive hand, it really helps for the Blue Wave first turn stride where they try to gimp you into a win, basically. That's like their win condition. They try to win early, not late. And then for finals, I fought against Gear Chronicles ZTB. It was fine. Like, I don't find the matchup hard using this deck, but it's just like whoever has the most resources will win. So then it just becomes a battle of resources, and with their restanders in their deck, like Gear Next and Gear Groovy, Next Stage, all that stuff, you really got to be careful about how you, not only how you use your resources, but how you regain your resources and try to pump up your hand against them so that you can actually survive their attacks. But since all of your cards have, or most of your cards that you can call out now have resist, you can actually just set up a board full of resist units so that they can't header around any of your units. So that's just really good. Same thing where if you're fighting against Kagero, you can avoid Denial Griffin. Grand Blue, you can avoid whatever the G-Guardian is called that's used with Night Rose in conjunction to destroy cards with Skeleton Cannoneer. Just stuff like that. But yeah, that has been my Asha deck profile that I won the SuperGames Shop Challenge with. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. It helps more than you guys think. And make sure, if you liked this video, that you can click the subscribe button. It shows you when my videos are up and new and updated and fresh. When it comes out, sends you a notification if you subscribe. So be sure to do that. That helps a lot. And then also check out our social medias in the description below. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Patreon. Patreon is for those who want to support just a little bit more than giving any of their regular support to the channel. And I sincerely appreciate all my Patrons. But with that being said, this has been Josh from Cardfight Empire, and I'll see you guys on the next video. Peace, guys.